Griffin, the Executive Minister here at the Sunshine Cathedral.
I'm Reverend Dr. Ann Atwell, the Minister of Connections here at Sunshine Cathedral.
I am Reverend Kevin Tisdall, the Minister of Education at Sunshine Cathedral.
Our goal is to help us understand the queer news that affects our LGBTQ+ community, especially as it relates to our stories of faith. Tucker Carlson, Governor Ron DeSantis, and Fox News are launching culture wars against our community. They want to push you back into the closet.
At Sunshine Cathedral, we are here to tell you that you are God's miracle and not God's mistake. Our commitment in partnering with Happening Out Television Network and Queer News Tonight is to give the queer faith community this voice for change.
Happening Out Television Network is a 501c3 nonprofit media platform in the television and radio model of PBS and NPR, but designed for our LGBTQ+ community. This special edition of Sunshine Cathedral is part of one of the largest LGBTQ+ media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Hotspots Magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ+ experience, and our television news and talk entertainment shows support their mission to educate the LGBTQ+ and broader community.
Happening Out Television Network supports the 10 pillars of the LGBTQ+ community, including Black, lesbian, Latino, trans, students, seniors, HIV/AIDS and healthcare, business, political advocacy, and we represent the 10th pillar, faith. So let's begin with the headlines and our faith community reaction to the news for today.
Sunshine Cathedral looks at hate in America. GOP makes history introducing more than 120 anti-LGBTQ+ bills in just the first month of 2023. Republican legislatures have introduced a record number of anti-LGBTQ+ legislation in Congress and state houses only 1 month into the new year. Advocates say they're not surprised and see this as a continuation of increasing anti-trans rhetoric that has gained momentum across the political spectrum, especially with the Republican base. The American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, tracked over 120 anti-LGBTQ+ bills that have already been filed in January. This includes more than 24 bills targeting access to medically necessary health care for transgender people across 11 states, most of which are located in the South. According to Victoria Kirby York, the National Black Justice Coalition Director of Public Policy and Programs, these laws will disproportionately impact the Black trans community. Bills proposed this year in South Carolina and Virginia bar state health care providers from recommending or administering puberty blockers, hormones, and gender-affirming surgeries to patients younger than 21. In Oklahoma, legislators went so far as to introduce a bill that bans gender-affirming care and, quote, gender transition procedures, end quote, coverage for trans adults under the age of 26. Most offensively, they have nicknamed this legislation as the Millstone Act, whose name is derived from a Bible verse about punishing adults who harm children. The bill is a direct nod to Christian nationalist ideology. So, my friends, that bill name takes me back a little bit to my childhood Sunday school class, where we had to learn this one particular verse, that it is better to have a millstone wrapped around your neck and dropped into the depths of the ocean than to lead one of my youngest one astray. So my thought about this whole bill is triggering from the very beginning back to childhood and bringing this into adulthood of thinking that this is how our legislatures really want to treat people about how we treat each other, rather than looking at us with love and respect for each other. So I think as we look at this, we really have to be very careful about how we interpret scripture has been introduced as bills' names.
Yes, it's intentionally weaponizing. They've taken Matthew 18, a verse from the Gospel of Matthew, named the thing, and that is supposed to trigger people who've been abused by the Bible, and it's also supposed to galvanize the fundamentalist community, because they know, who talks about a millstone? They know exactly what that means. That is insider language to galvanize this group against that group. It is oppressive. And it's sort of the legacy of southern states, and that includes Oklahoma. That's sort of, I'm from Arkansas, you're from Alabama. And this is the legacy we're constantly trying to face and live down, that we are from a region that from the beginning has been against somebody, and so against somebody that they have to try to control, manipulate, leave out, demonize, enslave. It's always somebody. And I don't think our nation will ever be a healthy nation as long as large parts of the nation continue to value oppression over true liberty for all people.
Absolutely. They're always wanting to scapegoat somebody. Again, biblical passage, they want to scapegoat somebody.
Leviticus.
And what's interesting to me about this, and it's very common, bring in the children. Save the children. We have to save the children. The children are the most vulnerable. Children are frequently the most warm, welcoming, accepting people around. And to save them from something which doesn't really need to be saved, it's appalling.
Yeah.
It really is an affront to my faith.
I want to save trans children.
Exactly,
who
exactly.
Are not going to be able to live their lives.
Exactly.
Because of this sort of hateful legislation.
Right.
I've worked with queer youth who are non-binary, who are questioning who they are today, and to deliberately take away any kind of support for them makes absolutely no sense to me.
You and your husband raised children and grandchildren. What if the grandson that you'd raised together had some special need? Of course, having queer caregivers would have been in his advantage, but can you imagine the person that you raised to being an amazing adult, if there was a state, your state, keeping him from living his best life and being his true self?
It scares me beyond belief that we have to still fight this particular fight. And every time we think that things are moving forward, somebody comes up with some crazy idea that, oh, no, we need an enemy. And I think that's what it is, almost more than anything else. They need an enemy, somebody to point out as being less than them. And I don't know, even when I grew up in the Black Baptist Church, that was not considered Christian.
Right. More than an enemy, some of them need an enema. That's they just need to get some of that nastiness out.
Spiritual enema.
Yeah. Amen. Spiritual enema.
That's what we need to do.
Ann, why don't you take us on?
All right. Sunshine Cathedral looks at the Pope, Vatican, and queer community. Pope, Anglican, and Presbyterian leaders denounce anti-gay laws. Pope Francis, the head of the Anglican Communion, and the top Presbyterian minister joined together and denounced the criminalization of homosexuality and said gay people should be welcomed by their churches. The three Christian leaders spoke on LGBTQ+ rights during an unprecedented joint airborne news conference this week while returning home from South Sudan, where they took part in a 3-day ecumenical pilgrimage to try to nudge forward the young country's peace process. The mission of the three church groups was to focus on civil rights in Africa. Recently, the Church of England has decided to allow blessings for same-sex civil marriages, but said same-sex couples could not marry in its churches. The Vatican forbids both gay marriage and blessings for same-sex unions. Yeah. You know, what's interesting to me about this is that these faith leaders are trying to please everybody.
Yeah.
And that never works. It just doesn't work. Either you affirm the sacred value of all people, as beloved by the divine, as beloved by God, or not.
Yeah.
Pick one or pick the other. You're not going to please everybody. And if you call yourself a faith leader, then you really, I would hope, believe that all people have sacred values. So what's missing here? What's going on?
Well, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too by saying we want to protect them from having their identities criminalized, and yet it's religious teachings about them that got them criminalized.
Yeah.
And so without atoning, without making amends for contributing to that. And a lot of this also is the result of colonization,
right,
where we come to your country, take your resources, force our religion on you, and then leave you with all that, and then later condemn you for holding prejudices that we taught you were necessary. And so if the church isn't going to take responsibility for its role in colonization and for its role in abusive interpretation of scripture and teaching and that sort of thing, then anything else you have to say, if you're not going to say, I'm sorry for what I've done, anything else you have to say, I'm not trying to hear.
Yeah.
You know, I went to Episcopal Seminary, and I was fascinated to learn that in their Book of Common Prayer, that they have blessings just about for everything.
Yeah.
You know, there's blessing for houses, there's blessing for cars, there's blessing for the fox in the hunt for the dog,
hunt, yeah.
for the
Right,
hunt.
right, yeah.
And but yet they still struggle.
For the hound and the hunt for the fox. That's
Right,
what it is,
right,
yeah.
right.
But yet they still struggle around blessing. Some denominations are struggling around blessing of same-sex couples.
Yes.
And it's like, you know, really, we can bless those things, but we still have to argue about blessing people who are in same gender loving relationship. What? I don't understand that.
There's the blessing of the pets every October,
So we can bless all of that, but yet we still have denominations,
but not us.
Right.
denominations who want to argue about what we can and what's right and what's fair to bless or not bless.
That's good.
Now, our wedding was here. Robert and I got married here at Sunshine Cathedral, and we had 11 clergy people participating in it. Nobody's more married than us. And one of them was an Anglican priest. But I don't know that she could have done that in her church.
Right.
But she was able to do it in ours.
Right, right. And I think that brings home really why we need places like Sunshine Cathedral, the very progressive, open, and not just affirming, but queer churches.
Yes.
We are not just open and affirming, but welcoming and celebrating.
Yes. Celebrating. Celebrating.
Right,
That's
right.
the thing. Kevin, what's next for us, huh?
Sunshine Cathedral looks at the attack on drag queens. Governor Ron DeSantis tries to punish Orlando venue that hosted Christmas drag show. The administration of anti-LGBTQ+ Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is trying to take away the liquor license of a performing arts center as punishment for hosting a drag show that children were allowed to attend. The Florida Department of Business Professional Regulation filed a complaint this week against the Orlando Philharmonic Plaza Foundation Incorporated after it hosted, quote, a drag queen Christmas, unquote, show on December 28th. The complaint took issue with the fact that the drag show was advertised as all ages and said the notice warning about inappropriate content, quote, was barely visible, unquote. As per the complaint, the show included sexually explicit songs and dances without expressly prohibiting children from attending. In reality, the venue left it up to the parents' discretion with a sign that read, quote, while we are not restricting access to anyone under 18, please be advised that some may think the context is not appropriate for under 18, unquote. Former Florida legislator Carlos Guillermo Smith shared his view on the matter on Twitter. He tweeted that this attempt by the DeSantis administration is nothing but a misuse of regulatory power that can cause severe economic consequences for local businesses. My goodness. Here we are in 2023, and the most important thing that our governor has to talk about are drag shows. Drag Bible Hour hosted by our senior minister kind of put that in context. We were able to look at the queers in the Bible and realize, especially in one of my favorite books, the Book of Esther, where we looked at how drag queens were most important to the evolution of Esther in that book. If it wasn't for her eunuchs, who most often were in drag, she wouldn't have been able to become Queen Esther. Yep. So again, we just have way too much going on in, again, I'm going to keep saying it, finding enemies to fight.
And it's just hypocritical anyway, to try to resurrect this Hays Code for live entertainment in the 21st century. Governor DeSantis needs to not be micromanaging my life. That's not helping anybody else. And if this whole thing about content, save the children, all this content, it's BS. Because if you have, unless you shield your children from the magazine rack at the supermarket, unless you don't have a television in your home, unless you don't have access to radio or podcasts, sexual content happens. I remember as a child watching Bugs Bunny getting in drag and trying to seduce Elmer Fudd. Get over yourself.
You know, we have lots of local places that do drag shows in our community here, and we love them and we want to affirm them. But I want to be very clear in this thinking is that it will just not stop with these places.
That's right.
I predict that this will also come to places like Sunshine Cathedral that host drag shows and other performances. And so if we think that it's just going to stop there, it's not. I don't think this administration or other administration, even throughout our nation, is going to stop at just this point. That's why I'm also proud that we have places like Sunshine Cathedral who will continue to do drag shows and host other events here at our space, because we want to make this a safe place for everybody, and it is a safe place for everybody.
Right. And when you talk about safe places for everybody, you're talking about faith communities and churches. One thing that we have often said is that we want people to be able to live their lives openly and authentically.
Yes.
If someone appreciates the art of drag, and it is an art, it's an entertainment form, it's phenomenal. If that is something that is really meaningful for folks, they're living their life authentically.
Yes.
They're not hurting anybody. And I think then that it passes that on to anybody else who may need to see that. Hey, I like that. I want to live my life that way. If this person can do it, why can't I do it?
Drag is an exaggeration. RuPaul says it doesn't change who you are, it reveals who you are. Drag is an exaggeration of our reality. And so what drag queens are, they are permission giving, and that's what they're afraid of.
Yeah.
Drag queens give people permission to live their lives authentically, joyfully, out loud. And so somebody puts on a wig, somebody looks like a clown, someone lip syncs to a song. Do they really care? No, it is the political undertones of I am doing this, and so you can do a smaller version of this yourself. And if we just all live our lives, that threatens power keepers.
Oh, yeah.
This is about power. Make no, and we do it in church because it's one of the ways we worship. It's one of the ways we affirm the sacred value of all people. Drag queens have always been the shamans of our tribe. We do it in church because that now is part of how we worship. Dare you really come for how people worship?
Exactly.
And what are you afraid of?
Yeah,
This-
there's
Judges,
a
what are you
whole
afraid
lot
of?
more than
What are
that.
you afraid of?
What's going on
Always
there?
the question.
All right. Let me calm down. Let me bring my energy back down so we can continue this show. Sunshine Cathedral looks at Donald Trump and trans community. Trump will punish doctors and hospitals providing trans health care if elected president. In a recent story released on his social media platform, former President Trump vowed to punish doctors and who provide gender-affirming health care to minors if he is reelected next year, wading into a contentious debate that has captured the attention of state and federal lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. It is one of the strongest anti-LGBTQ plus messages against the LGBTQ plus community in modern history. In the nearly 4-minute long straight-to-camera video, Trump outlined his plan to protect children, quote, protect children from left-wing gender insanity, end quote, unveiling a slate of extreme policy proposals targeting transgender identities, including a federal law that recognizes only 2 genders and bars transgender women from competing on women's sports teams. He even suggested a complete ban of trans medical surgery in America. Trump also said that he plans to pass a law barring minors from receiving gender-affirming health care in all 50 states and intends to direct the Justice Department to investigate the pharmaceutical industry and individual hospitals to determine whether they, quote, deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich, end quote. As per the video, doctors treating transgender youth will be booted from Medicaid and Medicare under his leadership. The video also mentioned that his proposed policy changes would extend to education and school officials.
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple. Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Can you believe this? I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. I will then ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures and pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. It'll go very quickly. I will declare that any hospital or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare and will be terminated from the program immediately. Furthermore, I will support the creation of a private right of action for victims to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minor children. The Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients, in this case, very vulnerable. We will also investigate whether Big Pharma or others have illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers, which are in no way licensed or approved for this use. My Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination and the elimination of federal funding. As part of our new credentialing body for teachers, we will promote positive education about the nuclear family, the roles of mothers and fathers, and celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique. I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth. The bill will also make clear that Title IX prohibits men from participating in women's sports, and we will protect the rights of parents from being forced to allow their minor child to assume a gender which is new and an identity without the parents' consent. The identity will not be new, and it will not be without parental consent. No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender, a concept that was never heard of in all of human history. Nobody's ever heard of this, what's happening today. It was all when the radical left invented it just a few years ago. Under my leadership, this madness will end. Thank you very much.
It's like his goal is to be a cartoon villain. He's not even trying to seem reasonable anymore. You know, and of course, if I had heard all of that with something that wasn't verifiably false, I would have probably just fallen out of my chair anyway. In all of human history, there are lots of cultures in history that have gender fluidity, that have special roles for people who don't fit the binaries. And sometimes those roles are sacred, and sometimes they are special, a part of the family. But I almost couldn't even continue listening once he said the words nuclear family.
Yes.
How many children does he have by how many wives? I mean, his is not a nuclear family. His is not one wife, him and 2 kids living in the suburbs. The hypocrisy, I can't even stand. P.S. What's going to happen if this is such a minority of people that you're making a big deal about? What you were doing is you're distracting people from things that do impact them to keep them focused on stuff that won't, while hurting the people it does impact. What's going to happen is that every bully in the world now has more permission to target trans kids or families that are made up differently. And so these people are more vulnerable, more unsafe, just because he said those words. Never mind if it actually becomes law. Yeah. This is very dangerous. It's very discriminatory. And as Reverend Robert said earlier, at home I call him Reverend Honey, as he said earlier, it never stops with one group. If we just sit by and let this happen, the next group, and the next group, and finally your group. And that's what's so terrifying.
And the thing I believe about all that he just said was he does not believe any of that. It is the people who are behind him. And I say follow the money. And I believe if you follow the money behind Donald Trump, it will lead right back to a lot of these evangelical churches who are pushing this agenda.
Yes.
Right. We know so many people in our community. Sunshine Cathedral, we are open and affirming. We're an LGBTQ plus church. We welcome everybody wherever they are in their faith journey. We know and we love, and our friends, our family, are part of the trans community, the non-binary community. So this it was very difficult for me to watch because I just felt like almost like a punch in the stomach. It's
It
like
was
they're
ugly.
attacking my family.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was ugly. It was threatening.
Yeah, it really was.
threatening.
It
It was
really
deliberately
was.
threatening. It was ugly threatening. And while he's yelling this script that he had no integral or spiritual or intellectual connection to,
Correct.
what was clear is threat to an already marginalized community.
Yes.
And any decent person has to respond to that with some with the visceral, no, we can't treat people that way. We can argue about what age to start a thing, but just to say these people are somehow fundamentally less than human and we're not even gonna let them, this is erasure. And that is what only the worst of dictatorships have done throughout the years. And every country that has done that to any group never comes out the good guy in the history books.
Right.
Even if you think you can rewrite the history books, eventually truth outs. I'm sorry,
Right.
Rebecca.
And just on a different vein, this is the woke right telling everybody what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it.
And who they're going to cancel.
And who they're going to cancel. This is the guy who believes in individual rights except for the people that he dislikes. And it's clear, I think, that everybody at this table is saying the same thing, that he doesn't believe a word that he says. He thinks that this is going to get enough of a coalition that will get him back into the White House. And I know that even the right wing is beginning to walk away from him. So this may be his last attempt to scream like some crazy person did in Congress the other day, "You liar."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I disagree with his politics as much as he's committed to any politics. I disagree with his politics. I'm afraid of his prejudices.
Yes.
Right, right. And I recognize also, I mean, here at Sunshine Cathedral, a large part of what we do is putting people back together with a faith community. When people hear that, if they're part of the trans community or the NB community, any part of the LGBTQ plus community, the straight community who have children maybe who are trans or NB, we put their faith, hopefully, back to them. We guide them, we help them. When they hear this kind of thing, it's just devastating. It's destroying. It's life destroying.
It is. And we're here to help, as you said,
Right.
put people, we are here to save people, not from some afterlife thing that we can't prove.
Right.
We're here to save you from that kind of foolishness that destroys lives here and now.
Right, exactly.
Which is why we need a Sunshine Cathedral.
Exactly.
Locally and
Exactly.
globally.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Robert.
So, Sunshine Cathedral says, we say gay for our students and teachers. The Show Me State, I love that. The Show Me State shows Florida by making Don't Say Gay even worse. Lawmakers in Missouri are considering a Republican proposed bill that would ban the discussion of gender identity or sexual orientation at all ages and grade levels. This week, Missouri Senate Education and Workforce Development Committee held a hearing at which the bill was to be discussed. Any public or charter school staff member would be prohibited from discussing gender identity or sexual orientation unless they are a mental health professional and have parental consent if the bill is passed. The Missouri bill is more restrictive than Florida's Don't Say Gay law passed last year. Florida prohibits instructions on gender identity and sexual orientation from kindergarten through third grade. But Missouri doesn't specify a range. Critics argue that the broad bill will prohibit LGBTQ plus teachers from discussing their spouses due to the possibility that it might indicate their sexual orientation. In addition, it could prohibit teachers from teaching books that include LGBTQ plus characters or topics and forbid health classes from discussing sexual orientation or gender identity. Republican State Senate Mike Moon is unapologetic about the possible restrictions under the law. While talking to the Kansas City Star, he said, quote, "Gender identity and sexual orientation conversations would be prohibited. If they think that would be included, then it likely will be," end quote. Wow. I'm glad we live in the great state of Florida. Reading and listening to that. And at the same time, it just reminds me that we still have so much to do to help people where they are and to educate people around laws. Because if you don't understand the nuance of what was being said in this proposed law, it's almost like a blank check being written.
Yeah.
And in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, this needs to be returned insufficient funds.
Yes.
That this is not credible, that this is not realistic, that this is not human, and this does not show love towards anyone in our society. And it reminds me of the question, how do we get here?
Right.
Yeah.
How do we get here?
And this is one of the reasons I think it is so important that people come out. I understand why they don't now, because it's scary. Because the church is going to be mean to you. Your state government may be mean to you. Maybe political candidates could be mean to you. And that encourages families and neighbors to be mean to you. It is scary. It is scary. But the more of us that people know about, it's just hard to hate your friends. Yes. It's just hard to hate people you love. And so if we're out, then they have faces and lives, and then it's harder to do those kinds of things. I thought it was an internal thing. I've only in middle age bothered to come out as non-binary. Who cares? Well, because of this mess.
Yeah.
And so I want people to know. I identify as queer. I'm a same gender loving person in a seropositive biracial relationship. I mean, all these things that were meant to be just private, just my life, I have to put on display because people are being put on at risk for who they are. And so the reason I really think it's important to come out is because let them know who they're hurting is someone you love. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I'll stop it. Right. It may even fire up their anger and make them come harder. I don't know. But the people who are voting for these people who are doing this need to know they're hurting people you love, and you can stop it.
Right. We've gone back. I mean, just listening to this, we've gone back, oh my goodness. I mean, back to the 1950s, 1960s, where it was against the law just to discuss or come out. Mm-hmm. You know, you couldn't come out. You would lose your job, that kind of thing. You couldn't talk about your life. You couldn't talk about your sexual orientation, gender identity. I'm not even sure was something that was discussed back during that time. And so we've taken this huge step back, or they're trying to make us take a huge step back. But what you just said, Darrell, we have to come out. We have to identify who we are. We have to say, I am an out lesbian in a very happy marriage with my wife, and I'm not going back in the closet. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like that, that is your thing. Yeah. You can pass all the laws you want to. I'm not going back in the closet. Right. So it's that simple.
And there's another part of it. If you do not vote, you do not have a voice. Yeah. I have been voting since 1973 and have never, and I mean this, have never missed any kind of election, including dog catcher. If you don't vote, you do not have a voice. So please understand that, yeah, the legislatures are doing this, but the legislatures are supposed to be representatives of the people. I never call them leaders because they're not. They represent me. So if you go out and vote for the right people, then you can begin to change things. It's going to take a long time because those folks have entrenched themselves as much as possible. And we can still make a difference.
We're not powerful. We're not all powerful. We are sometimes powerless. Sometimes things happen that are unfair, but we need never be silent.
Yes.
They may do things that I can't stop, but they won't do it over my silence.
Right. That's exactly. Right, that's
all right, Anne, take us on.
Sunshine Cathedral is the world's largest progressive queer church. Here is an opportunity to see a bit more. We encourage you to join us every Sunday for our international broadcast at 10:30 a.m. Happening Out Television Network broadcasts our Sunday service on Roku, Apple Television, YouTube, Facebook, and other streaming platforms.
I'm Kiara Johnson, the Executive Director of the National LGBTQ Task Force. And as one of the most important civil rights organizations, I know the value of the support that comes from all corners of our community. That's why Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Next up, we introduce a segment we call Sunshine Cathedral's The Gay Agenda. This will include important events and activities that are coming to our Sunshine community.
The gay agenda. Ash Wednesday and Lent is Wednesday the 23rd. Lent begins on Ash Wednesday. Now, why does that matter to progressives? If you are LGBTQ+, you probably think that Ash Wednesday is what brought the party to an end in New Orleans. You know, Mardi Gras. But it is important to New Orleans Mardi Gras season revelers and to Sunshine Cathedral. Ash Wednesday is a holy day of prayer and fasting in many Western Christian denominations. It is preceded by Shrove Tuesday and falls on the first day of Lent, the 6 weeks of penitence before Easter. It is observed by Catholics in the Roman Rite, Lutherans, Moravians, Anglicans, Methodists, Nazarenes, as well as by some churches in the Reformed tradition, including certain Congregationalists, Continental Reformed, and Presbyterian churches. So let's talk about Ash Wednesday and Lent and what is important to queer progressives. First of all, what I think is important is that we queer the season of Lent, that we queer Ash Wednesday. So that whole thing about, I have trouble saying the words penitential season, because that's really not how we do it. Because we're not trying to instill false guilt just so that we can offer false redemption from the false guilt. That's not the queer perspective. We read everything from the margins and to people in the margins. And so that Ash Wednesday isn't to remind us that we're mortal, so we better get our stuff together. No, that Ash just reminds us that we are the dust of the earth. We are stardust. We are fairy dust. We are the dust of eternity. And we all are. So we are unified with all the elements in the universe. And we all do share a life that is made sacred by its brevity. And so how we treat each other, how we love each other, that matters. And so that's how we kick off Lent. And then it is a season of spiritual growth. We don't say penitential. We do have a little confession thing because we all have fallen short of our highest ideals and want to get back on the right track. But that's not about God judging us. That's about us wanting to be all that we can be, all that God has made us to be. And so that's why it's important to us, because not only is it the preparation for Easter, which is a real big party, but it's also a spiritual renewal, and from our queering of it, a spiritual renewal that doesn't beat you down first.
Right.
It lifts you up from the beginning so that you can be all the more lifted then on Easter.
Right.
What do you...
To me, it's a change of perspective. I didn't grow up, yes, we had Lent, and okay, yes, it's Lent. And you could tell it was Lent because all the music went to the minor key there.
Yeah.
You know? It's just, but I've taken that and I've changed kind of the context of it. We are in a season of preparation. We are moving towards Good Friday. Something really not great. That's the day we mark something really
Brutal.
horrid happened, brutal happened. But we know it didn't get the final word. That is Easter.
Right.
It didn't get the final word. And so this, to me, the season of preparation is a time when I focus on more prayer, more spirituality, more meditation. It's about being intentional and taking the time to prepare for and to be reminded of that bad things don't always get the last word.
Right.
That has been a real shift
Right.
for me. But it's something that I actually anticipate and appreciate now, which I never really did before.
Right. Golgotha happens.
Right.
But so does Easter.
Yes, exactly.
I want to hear what the Baptists have to say about this. Two of them at the table. The Anglican and the Presbyterian. Bob, here's a Baptist.
How about
I
you
was
guys?
just getting ready to jump into that. Growing up in an African-American Northern Baptist church, I didn't know anything about Ash Wednesday. I knew that my classmates who were Catholic would go to church and would come back with some schmutz on schmutz. That's a religious word, right? On their foreheads, but I never really understood what it meant. And then, of course, I meet Reverend Dr. Durrell, and he's standing at the pulpit with a can of Coca-Cola, talking about I'm not giving up anything for this season of penitence. But what I've learned over the years since then is that it is, just as Reverend Nance just said, a time for preparation to understand that our faith walk has somewhere to go.
Yeah.
And when we get to Palm Sunday and they're waving the palms and it's wonderful, and you go through that whole week leading up to Good Friday, and then the resurrection, and we realize that on this small blue ball that we live on, there are a lot of things that we may not understand, but we need to respect what other people do.
Yeah.
And that, as a Baptist, is what I learned.
I love the Good Friday Easter connection. We all fall and we can all get back up.
Yeah.
Robert?
As someone who grew up in the Southern African Missionary Baptist Church, Ash Wednesday, Lent didn't mean anything else. We went straight to Easter. So we didn't bother about giving up anything. We didn't bother about even too much Good Friday. You know, we got into the last seven words way later. But even the last seven words, like, okay, what is that all about? But anyway, but today, I take it to mean, a lot more serious than I did in growing up in the church. My first experience with a lot of the Ash Wednesday, Lent stuff, I actually went my time in the military. So I had a whole different appreciation about what it means to be in the armed services while you are observing certain religious holidays. And that one was very meaningful to a lot of people that we work with. But for me, it also meant it's not about giving up. It's like, what can I take on?
Yeah.
What can I take on to understand myself more? What can I take on to understand how I interact with others more? And so it came much more personal than it did about anything out there. This was about me not giving up, but also just being open to understanding more about what more this journey has to offer me in life. And so Easter does come. But you got to get through all the other stuff before you get to Easter. But there's Easter Sunday morning joy. And in my Baptist church, we did do sunrise service.
Oh, well, some of us haven't gone to bed by then, though. That makes it difficult in our community. You remember, Kevin, because I do this in a different way now, but in those days when we were at a church in New Jersey, I was the minister, and one year we gave up Lent for Lent. That's what we did. Like, I canceled Lent.
Yes, you did.
I did
Yes,
that
you did.
to give up guilt. What I do usually here is on Ash Wednesday, I'll say, if you want to give up something, you can take things on, like a new project or more spiritual disciplines, but if you want to give up something, give up shame. Give up fear, give up guilt, give up self-loathing, give up homophobia, give up self, and that has actually been proven therapeutic for a lot of people. It's I can give up that myth. Yeah, eat all the chocolate you want, unless your doctor says otherwise. But like I gave up snacks for a few weeks. How did that make you a deeper, kinder? Give up whatever's really keeping you from thriving, and you don't want me without caffeine. I promise. You just don't.
Or me without my martini salad. Just saying.
All right, Robert. Keep going with you. With your olives.
Did you know that we have an entire entertainment and theatrical program called Sunshine Cathedral Center for Performing Arts? So many world-famous names come to Sunshine to perform and help us raise critical funds to continue the mission of service to our community. Dozens of performances, events are held every year. For example, the world-famous Miss Richfield 1981 will perform Saturday, March 11th at 8 p.m. She will perform in her new show called Cancel Cultured Pearls. For more information and tickets, go to sunshinecathedral.org. So let's talk about Queer Church Performing Arts Center and how it serves our LGBT community. As I thought about that, I thought about some of the performers that we have had come through our series here. We've had people like Fran Drescher, we've had Lorna Luff, we've had, may he rest in peace, Leslie Jordan. And so just thinking about some of the people who have come through here, and of course, there's Coco Peru, there's Miss Bunny. We're going to have Miss Richfield come up in a few weeks. And, with all the ones that are coming up, it just reminds me that we are a community among communities here. And the Sunshine Cathedral Performing Arts Center is just one of the communities that we offer here at Sunshine Cathedral Square. And so when I think about all that we do and how we operate, this place is a community center on multiple levels for people to come and interact, whether it's theatrical, whether it's just being a one-person show, or even if we have the Symphony of the Americas that have performed here. It just reminds me of how complex and how important this community is to the larger community, because it brings us together for a different kind of worship and a worship experience in our community that brings us together in song, entertainment, and art and crafts.
It's a safe way to come to church.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they can't imagine because church was so hateful to them. If they were trans, if one of their parents were trans, if they were gay, if they were bi, if they have a gay kid or whatever. It's just been so hurtful. But they like drag, they like comedy, they like good music, they like folk music or chamber music. And this is where some of that's happening. Free parking, competitive prices, welcoming space. And so we really do think of it. We do not, on our end, people think what they think. And that's one of the good things about it, is that you get to think what you think. But on our end, we do not separate a Friday performance from a Sunday worship service, because the same things are happening. People are gathering, people are being affirmed, and people are getting a chance to love themselves and others. That's what we do with liturgy. That's what we do with performances. That's what we do with sermons. That's what we do with comedy monologues. That's what our whole purpose is to bring people together as loving community. Sunday morning is one of the ways we do that. Evening performances is another way that we do that. And that's what I love about it, is that it just opens up what it means to be church, and it opens up ways that you can become part of our community, and you can be a fully active member of this faith community and never once set foot in this building on a Sunday morning, because we offer so many different things.
Right.
And so if Sunday is triggering for you, don't think about Sunday again, but please don't miss Fran Drescher when she's here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then so I love all of that about it. I do want to ask you specifically, Ann, I know you probably have your own things to say, but add to it this.
Okay.
What does it mean for you, for your friends, for the women's community, the lesbian community, the trans women? What does it mean when we have a Judy Gold, who slayed in January, or when we have the super beautiful Ann Steele with just the voice of an angel, or we have Laith Ashley, a trans model and actor, or Matt Alber, who's like right out of the Bear community, or Trey Crowder, who is a straight guy coming to give us love. I mean, so when you see these different people, these women, these trans people, these Bear guys, these straight allies, what does that mean to you? Because if it means something to you, I'm guessing it means something to a lot of other people, and I want them to know about it.
Well, immediately, affirmation.
Right.
Affirmation. I mean, we talk so frequently here at Sunshine Cathedral about the importance of recognizing people where they are in their journey, particularly queer folk. But there's another layer, specifically for me and others, women.
Right.
Women in the church. Women in the church have so frequently been set aside and put aside, and to come in and see, okay, yeah, we're getting this, we're getting that, but then we're getting Judy Gold. Really? Judy Gold? Oh my gosh, an out lesbian.
Yeah.
Ann Steele, an out lesbian.
Right.
To have that kind of affirmation in a church community, like you said, whether or not they ever step foot in here on a Sunday morning,
Right.
that, okay, fine, yes or no, that's entirely up to you. But come and see Ann Steele.
Right.
And see yourself here at Sunshine Cathedral. Come and see Judy Gold and see yourself here at Sunshine Cathedral. And if they come to church on Sunday morning, see Reverend Ann
Yes.
at Sunshine Cathedral, see Reverend Marion at Sunshine Cathedral. We are here to have that. And for the trans folks, for the non-binary folks, it's affirmation. We see ourselves in a place where historically we have been neglected, not just because maybe we identify outside gender norms or because of our sexual orientation, but because of our lived gender. This is who we are. Yeah.
So
Powerful
representation.
stuff.
Yeah.
Powerful
Representation.
stuff. Yeah.
And it also, when you hear the Jewish Judy, or when you hear the agnostic Trey, I mean, and they're preaching our sermon.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That, I find that very validating, you know, that spirituality can't be contained to dogma, doctrine, tradition, denominational labels, that people who come from very different walks of life are singing our song
Right.
with us, because it's love, it's community, it's the golden rule.
Right. When we had Ann Steele here just recently, Reverend Robert shared with me, there was a lot of women here, a lot of women I've never seen before. I've never seen this group of women. And I said, because of Ann Steele and because Sharon Gless was on the bill.
Yes.
Not only young women, but older women.
Yes.
Women with the gray hair.
Right. Why do you think Sharon Gless, by the way, who is straight, but almost every person who was like, woo, was not, they were lesbians. What was that crossover about?
Oh, she is an icon. She's an
Because she played
icon.
strong women characters.
She's an icon. Christine Cagney.
I'm saying.
And if you don't get it, I can't even explain it. Okay? If you don't get it, I can't even explain it. As a 60-year-old out lesbian, Christine Cagney,
Yes.
Cagney and Lacey.
Yeah.
I mean, representation on television
Yeah.
back in the 80s.
Right.
I mean, 40 years ago.
Right. And then the queerest folk mom, the best mom
my
ever.
gosh, yes, the queerest folk mom. Phenomenal. Sharon Gless is iconic in the lesbian community. And to have her here at Sunshine Cathedral, not just this time, but she's been here before.
And we'll be back.
Oh my goodness. That will bring women out every single time.
And just real quick, looking at it from the performer's point of view, so many of them have come into our church and looked around and said, oh, poop, it's really a church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to
they are
swear.
surprised. Yeah. And
Please
we were
do.
like, be yourself. We invited you here because of who you are.
Yeah.
And once they realized we were serious about it, boom, they were right there.
I just have to say, I love Trey Crowder's opening line.
Gosh.
God damn, that's absurd.
That was
Praise God.
All right, all right. Next, we are going to do a segment of the best of Sunshine Cathedral. Each of us are going to tell you what we think is the best part of Sunshine and our mission to be servants to our LGBTQ plus community, and I'll start.
Yay.
All right. My best thing, I believe, for me, is the affirmation of women and women's ministry at Sunshine Cathedral. I never even imagined that a woman could be a minister. I never imagined that a woman could be a minister. I knew that it possibly could exist. I'd heard of it, but I didn't imagine it. And then you tap on out lesbian on top of that. I never, ever thought something like that could happen. And not only here is it just, okay, she's an out lesbian serving on staff, featured. Let's find what works best for you. Let's get you in ministry. Let's get you up there and preaching. Let's get you to do readings. That's pretty incredible.
Right, and you were on the worship leadership team. I mean, you drive probably a third of the liturgy every Sunday. You're on the preaching schedule, a few times a year. You have your own teaching ministry. You are in charge of your own feeding ministry. Well, it's our feeding ministry, but it's because of you. You make it happen. And so at Sunshine Cathedral, every minister is a minister of something. I'm the senior minister. I'm the cheerleader for all the ministers. But everyone's a minister of something, which means really everyone has their own congregation within the larger congregation, or sometimes their own 2 or 3 congregations within a congregation. That we're sort of a church of churches. And I don't think we could do that if it was all men or all white or all straight. Or I think you can only have diverse ministries if you have diverse ministers. And I guess that's what I love about it also. The openness, but not just of the practice, but the openness of belief. I guess the one thing you can't believe is that I don't deserve to exist. Other than that, it's almost all up for grabs.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And so that our theology is very open. We have atheists in our church. We have Buddhists. We have Jews. We have Muslims. In fact, we have one of our Muslim members is one of our best evangelists right now. He took a line from a sermon of mine a few weeks ago, and he has twisted and played with it and promoted it all over the world ever since.
Yes.
Is that God is an experience, and all of our doctrines and language and traditions and creeds that are trying to help us talk about it was never meant to limit the experience. Your experience is your own, and I can't tell you what it's supposed to be, and I can't tell you that it's not real, whatever it is. Right. And so because of that openness, we're not focused on what you have to believe about an invisible friend. We're focused on how you're supposed to treat your real friends that you can see and touch.
Right.
And then if you're experiencing and sharing love, my guess is that you are touching God, and God is touching you and expressing through you. And so that's what our focus is, which is why we're called heretics. But I prefer our hereticalness to the meanness that gets laws passed that hurt people.
All of the best movements were started by heretics.
Amen.
So there.
There you go.
So I think what I like best about the Sunshine Cathedral is our missional work. It kind of uses the Baptist language. I like the fact that we go out into community, that everything that happens here is not just about what happens at Sunshine Cathedral, 1480 Southwest 9th Avenue. We're both locally and we're also globally. And in that outreach, there's outreach, there's community, there's getting out there, and it's being out in the community. That's what I like about Sunshine Cathedral. Most important is that today we have to be out. We have to be out for that one little kid who's somewhere who's still contemplating if it's safe to be out. So I like the fact that we're out about everything that we do, and we do it unapologetically.
Right, absolutely, wherever we go. And Kevin, what do you think is the best thing of Sunshine?
Oh my goodness. We are a cradle to grave church. What I mean by that is that we get phone calls from all over South Florida asking us if we will christen their babies. We don't ask if they're a member. We don't ask them what they believe. We just say, absolutely, bring them in. If you want to be baptized, we will do it with water, without water, whichever way is most comfortable for you. And right here at Sunshine Cathedral Square, we've got groups that meet talking about recovery. We've got a youth group that's that's stationed right here at Sunshine Cathedral Square. We have a seniors daycare center right here at Sunshine Cathedral Square. If people pass away, we don't ask them how they passed away. We ask, what can we do to support you? And we will provide you with a minister who will take care of you. And we have a columbarium right here. So yeah, we're cradle to grave, and I love everything about us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also love that we identify as queer church.
Yeah.
Because, which doesn't mean just gay.
Right.
Doesn't mean gay friendly, although we are those things. But that the gay experience, the lived experience of queer people, pansexual, gay, lesbian, asexual, questioning, all transgender, that those lived experiences are the collective lens through which we see Scripture, Jesus, the divine, church, that everything comes from the queer experience. And so you can be straight and benefit from queer theology. We prove it here every week.
Yes.
And so that we're not just, there's lots of gay friendly, a lot of safe places, but we're more than that. We are queer church.
Right.
Let's see, what we got next on the agenda.
There you go.
Me?
Yeah.
When I'm just talking? Finally. Finally, tonight we want to talk about our special segment called You Are God's Miracle, Not God's Mistake. You've heard it a time or two already. Hear it again. You are God's miracle, not God's mistake. Church can be such a difficult subject for the LGBTQ plus community, but the overwhelming majority of our queer community identify with faith. Today we discuss if there's even a need for a Sunshine Cathedral. So our segment asks, why do we need queer churches? Difference between anti-gay and gay affirming and queer. We touched on it a little bit already, that first of all, we're obviously not anti-gay, and that anyone is. I don't know why you're anti any group of people. I'm anti-meanness, I'm anti-cruelty, I'm anti-oppression, but why would you ever be anti-Jewish or anti-gay or anti-woman or anti-black or anti-people with AIDS? I never understand why you have to make people into these less than human things to despise and try to eradicate. So we're not obviously not anti-gay. And most of us are gay or lesbian or bi. We do have a lot of straight people, though, that are fierce allies. We have transgender people and non-binary and pansexual and asexual and the whole lot of it. But the queer part is that we think all of that is part of the sacred rainbow, that each of those people are made in the divine image, that each of those people have sacred value, that each of those people have a sacred witness to share, telling their own authentic story. So that's what makes us a queer church. And maybe you think, well, I went to a nice Methodist church or a nice Presbyterian church, or my church is kind of like that. Maybe, and I hope so.
Yeah, yeah.
But probably most people went to a church that was silent about queer people or mean about queer people, or on Pride Sunday once a year would do a big celebration and then see you next year. That's probably what most people are more familiar with. To have a church where we're not just saying we're okay, and we're certainly not apologizing for ourselves, we're saying we are part of a divine plan to make the world better, and we celebrate that. We're not backing down from that at all. In fact, we think we have a special mission. We're here for a reason, and it's to love out loud and to show that no matter what you throw at us, we are going to live with integrity, we're going to live with joy, and you can't drag that out of us.
Very good.
Very good.
I'll go back to something that, again, Trey Crowder said when he was recently here. He said, if there had been a church like Sunshine Cathedral when he was a kid growing up, he would probably still be in the church.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the same thing for a lot of little kids out there who are still struggling with their identities. If they can find a place like a Sunshine Cathedral, or if they can just hear about a place like it almost becomes the Mecca. If you can just get here, we'll love you, we'll affirm you, we'll celebrate you. And I think that's what why we need a Sunshine Cathedral, is to be that light, to be that beacon of hope for people who have not yet heard that God loves them just as they are. You don't need to change anything. God loves you just as you are. That's why we need a Sunshine Cathedral.
I have a personal story to share. I had a family member down a number of years ago, and they came to Sunshine Cathedral. Said it was wonderful, it was fabulous, I love this church. I wish there was a church like this near me, but of course there isn't, in the middle of nowhere. Fast forward all these years ago now, we have the live stream broadcast. And so this family member has been enjoying the worship services, not often, but once in a while. It's nice to go on. Oh, Ann, it's nice to see you up there. It's nice to see your friends up there. It's great to see that. And then this family member, one of their children came out as non-binary. And then another child came out as trans. And here is this community out there saying, you know what? Not only do we love you and support you, you are welcome here. We celebrate you. We honor you. We affirm you for all of who you are. So that's special. That's really special.
That works for me.
Well, we are very different than your tradition, though. I mean, I guess we're different than all of our traditions.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's so blended. It's sort of the best of every tradition. But in the Baptist Church, it has its own sort of pageantry and its own sort of agenda. It's its own sort of message. And we're very different than that iteration, although I think we have a lot of the same passion, a lot of the same around justice and celebration and joy in that way. But it did look different. Was that hard at first to?
Oh my goodness. I listened to my friends talk about how they grew up and the churches that they grew up in. Their stories didn't mesh with my stories. I'm talking about Baptist church. At our church, my pastor never once denigrated any group of people for any reason. Now, we're talking about special days. They had a women's day, they had a youth day, but I don't remember a gay day. That doesn't mean that there was any negativity surrounding it. And a church like Sunshine Cathedral will always be necessary because what we say we mean. We believe in God's unconditional love. We believe that there is not a spot where God is not. You don't get that from a lot of churches. You get God, there's not a spot where God is not except.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work.
That
never
qualifier.
worked for me. And now that I know that there is a place like Sunshine Cathedral, one of the members of the New Jersey church once said to you, now that I've learned this, I can't go back.
Yeah.
You can't unlearn a
Yeah,
thing.
you can't unlearn a thing.
And we shared recently an experience that shows how disruptive our existence is. When I did Drag Bible, which I did in response to all the Drag Story Hour, that people were being all crazy and mean. And so I'm like, well, you know what? We're going to do it as worship. We're going to do Bible. We're going to talk about queer stuff in drag, in church. We didn't take it into the streets. We didn't take it on the road. It was in our sanctuary, our space. And we had the Rosary Brigade outside every week praying the Rosary against us, having placards up, telling us what a danger we are, praying out loud that God would save them from us. They're on our property. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't go to their church with signs, but just that we lived out loud in our own space, doing our own thing. We didn't knock on their door, but our very existence disturbed them that they came out in the dark 4 weeks in a row to pray the Rosary against us. That shows you how much we're needed. That alone shows that just that little disruption of what we're doing behind our own closed doors would threaten people so much, shows you not only do they need us, they need a lot more of us.
Sunshine Cathedral, hashtag holy disturbance.
There you go. There you go.
So that is today's news and stories from Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church based here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Remember, we feature a worldwide global fellowship. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ+ faith-based program like this in the entire world.
If our community is important to you, share this program with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ+ faith broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV?
The Sunshine edition of Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ+ digital television show in the world that celebrates God's love of the queer community. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories of faith and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these type of faith-based LGBTQ+ stories in motion and sound. This is the passion of Hotspot Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight. It is the basis of our existence and mission at Sunshine Cathedral.
That is the Sunshine Cathedral edition of Queer News Tonight. We hope you will follow us as we talk about the most important things about faith in our LGBTQ community. I'm Darrell Watkins, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus faith leaders, Reverend Dr. Robert Griffin, my husband, Reverend Dr. Ann Atwell, not my husband, and Reverend Kevin Tisdall, we invite you to join us at Sunshine Cathedral because Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Before we go, we have a special interview for you. Tonight we bring you famous singer and songwriter Ann Steele. She performed at Sunshine Cathedral's Performing Arts Center, and then Darrell discussed the intersections of queer faith, entertainment, and so much more.
Hello, I'm Darrell Watkins, the senior minister of the Sunshine Cathedral in Fort Lauderdale, #MyQueerChurch, sunshinecathedral.org. And with me today are two very special guests. We have Ann Steele, who is a singer from New York. Her latest album came out in 2019. The show she's doing now at Sunshine Cathedral is called The Mixtape of My Life. I saw it last year in Europe. Amazing. That's why she's here. And now by the time you see this, she'll be somewhere else. But you can find her. She travels. She's on cruises. She's in nightclubs. She's on tour. So you can find her. So follow her on the socials and at her website, annsteele.com. And then with her today is also her wife and business partner and co-parenting partner and best pal and the wind beneath her wings.
True story.
True story. And so, because I'm never going to remember Kelly Carpenter is her, but I'll never remember all of her because she's a business person and my head thinks artsy. So, but she's the business of the show business with the family, and she is a luxury travel advisor. She's the co-founder of Kelly Gregg Travel. She is Our Family Vacations. She's been doing this for 20 years and for 18. So they've been at this forever. And you have children. They're coming up too, right? She was named as one of the Out 100, an annual list for most influential members of the LGBT community, and also has received awards from Lambda Legal, Family Equality Council, and the Family Travel Association. So they're important. You see why I would want, right? But now what I want you to hear from them is their stories. They have amazing stories. We were on a cruise in Greece. Ann was the entertainment, and we were out and about one day because it was a small cruise, and so you get to meet almost everyone, really, even the entertainment and the chefs and everyone. And so we were on some Greek island in some port, Santorini maybe, Mykonos. One of them got canceled because of weather, so it was the other one. Anyway, and we saw them out, and because gay people, once they've met each other twice, are family. And so we're like, hey, come have a drink. And they did, because they looked around, they couldn't get out of it. They didn't have any excuse. So they're like, all right. And they joined us at our table at this beautiful cafe outdoors. And we were talking. And come to find out, Kelly and I lived in the same city. I don't think at the same time. We were both from the South. We both lived in a big Southwestern city. And we had both gone to the same church. Definitely not at the same time. But my career started in this church in Dallas, which is also what helped her in a moment of spiritual need. So we discovered all this, and but then we had cocktails. And so I don't remember a lot of the details, but I do know that if we have that conversation again, it'll come up again, and that's what I want you to hear. And then also, in addition to that, my work has always been to bring contemporary entertainment to people as a spiritual discipline, as a way of forming spiritual community, because my thesis in graduate school was that that's what gay people have always done anyway. So instead of saying, I get my spiritual needs at the nightclub, I want people to be able to say, I get my spiritual needs at the nightclub and at the Sunshine Cathedral, where there are very similar experiences. And her shows are like that. I honestly had a cathartic, spiritual, healing sort of experience in her show. So here's someone who was hurt by traditional religion. Here's someone who offers an alternative. I don't even know if you ever knew that you were doing that, but she is. And we have them both at the same table, and you're going to be fascinated. So that being said, that super tight, first time ever intro, Kelly, back us into what got me into wanting to do this at all?
Well, I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I grew up in a very, very Christian, very religious family. I was the oldest of 4 kids, and I knew that I was gay from the time I was probably a preteen, and kept it to myself, but kept journals, letters, things like that. And my parents eventually, through my middle school years, started reading my personal stuff, and obviously had some concerns and worried that I was gay and that was against their religion. And it's all they knew. I also, as I tell this story, I have a fabulous relationship with my parents, and they are wonderful grandparents to our kids. They love Anne. So, I'd like to start by saying, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there is hope, and there is healing. But it's a path. I mean, it does get better. But, at the time, I was a middle school, teenage gay kid that didn't quite know what to do with myself. And my parents didn't know what to do with me either. So, I went off to college in Dallas. They sent me to get cured. I attended Homosexuals Anonymous. I am an official unsuccessful graduate. I just did my Celine Dion again where I hit my microphone. I'm an unsuccessful graduate of Homosexuals Anonymous. But when I lived in Dallas, which is the conversation we're talking about, is I heard about MCC churches. And I was like, does this really exist? And I'm like, I'm going to show up and just see if you can be LGBTQ and you can be a Christian, if those two things can exist. Because in my mind at that point, they could not coexist. And I walked into the church for the first time thinking there was going to be like 10 people, like it was going to be going to my Homosexual Anonymous meeting where it's like 10 lost souls that they're lost whether they're gay or not, like that's sort of what my feeling was going to be. I walked in, it was this gorgeous, big, amazing church, beautiful sermons, great people. And I realized that they can coexist. And they can coexist in my own head, even if they don't coexist in my parents' head or in my family's head. And I did attend that church quite a bit. Did it help in the path of my parents? It did not. But it helped in sort of finding peace within myself. And, my relationship with my family was a long, challenging path. And my parents have a lot of regret about how they handled it. And I think, their need for me to forgive them was so big, and I just kept saying we have to forgive each other and just move forward because we have a long life together. And they've been able to do that, and we've been able to do that, and they are just a great integral part of our world. But it was not without challenges. But I just want to say out there that it's not hopeless, know. And if you can't find your family with those that you were raised with, then you find your family elsewhere.
Yeah, I also say I have a wonderful family, and it includes some relatives.
Yeah, there you go. It's very true.
Yeah. My first time at that same church was January 1991, and I went, had an amazing experience. Cried because I'd never seen gay families worship, and so all these people with their kids or with each other taking communion together. Didn't even imagine it. Cried. So I went back that night, smaller crowd at night, and some people noticed that I was new, and they asked me out after, do I go out with them for dinner or whatever? And I'm like, sure. So we went to some super gay Chinese restaurant, and then to Hot Oil Wrestling, and right, where these guys get down to their underwear and they wrestle on a plastic with hot oil. And this was my second time in this church, and I am at Hot Oil Wrestling, and I thought, I have found Shangri-La. This is where God wants me here. And so yeah, it was a very probably different experience, but
that's amazing.
And it wasn't in the church, but the church people, like the church leader core people, were like, hey, let's go to Hot Oil Wrestling. Yes.
Once again, you can be a Christian and you can enjoy Hot Oil Wrestling, right?
Exactly.
And we actually might have been there at the same time.
Oh, wow.
How about that?
Now
that you're talking about years.
Yes. Oh, that would have been great.
Interesting.
She probably wouldn't have gone to Hot Oil Wrestling.
Probably not.
No.
You never know.
Although there was a bar called Sue Ellen's. There was
I was going to say, I was probably having a Miller Lite at Sue Ellen's.
There was JR's in Sue Ellen's, Dallas, right?
Yeah.
And I smoked my first cigar ever at Sue Ellen's.
There you go.
There you go. Got to hang out with lesbians.
With lesbian tutorial, because I didn't even know how to do it. Like, here you go.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So was your experience of religion difficult?
So, no. I grew up in a very sort of easy, sort of religious life. My mom was a choir director, so we went to church, a Presbyterian church, but it was super light. There was no pressure. It wasn't intense like her sort of religious upbringing was. My mom was always very open-minded, and she was a dance teacher, so she owned a dance studios. There were always sort of like young, sort of gay-ish guys around that I kind of knew, but I never had met anyone that was a lesbian. And so when I moved, and I went to college in Indiana, like I grew up in Indiana, but never had any idea. Like I was a sort of a late bloomer on that whole thing. So like I was in college, went through all of college in Indiana, and then I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and sort of found my people and met the first lesbian I ever met, and she became a girlfriend for 7 years because that's what we do. But like it was the
Blueprint.
But I mean, there was no religious pressure on me at all. But I was never very spiritual. And what I will say is something that I've found through music and through songwriting and all of that is really getting back to who I am, and I think that is where my spirituality lies. And it's not necessarily found in a church for me. It's more, like you said, I mean, I remember walking out of my show and you and Robert were both emotional, and it was like an emotional show. And I think being able to share music for me and share my story and my experience through song and songwriting is my way to connect to other humans. And I think that is my spirituality. So I don't, we don't go to church now, but I would love to go to this church. This looks like an amazing place to be, a very open-minded, inclusive community.
We tried to
people.
trap you, but your schedule wouldn't allow.
I know.
Next
wanted to
time.
sing in church.
And I would next time. I will for sure. I would love that. And I will.
This is not going to be the last time we're here.
Right?
I'll
Right.
technically be singing in the church tomorrow night, but not at church.
Oh, right. That's true. That's true.
But I'm very excited.
We don't actually distinguish.
So that's considered.
Yeah. If you. Because we want to be the church for secular people too. Church is from a Greek word that means gathering. We just want to be the community.
I got it.
And so when people come, if you come to hear you and then they don't ever come back to hear me, they still came. They were part of our community.
Right.
And that's what we want.
Right.
We want that connection.
But I also think it's important for the community to know what you guys do and how much you give back to the community.
Yes.
I think that's very important. So I'm glad that message will be delivered to anyone that comes to the show.
Now, you never felt a call to path. You've not been sitting on cushions with Buddhists or going on great pilgrimages.
No, I haven't. But you had.
But I was going to ask, did you try alternative paths, or was it just all or nothing? So this fundamentalist thing, or it can't be anything, or did you go on little searches?
So I always say that I was a dabbling Buddhist for a while. When I was probably at my lowest point in my life, going through a divorce and custody battle and all of that,
prior to Anne,
obviously, prior to Anne, I wanted to learn how to meditate, and so I just Googled meditation New York City. I was living in New York City at the time, and I just walked into this place, and it was a Buddhist, center, and I learned how to meditate. And I also learned the teachings of the Buddhist teachings, which is actually really just mindfulness, honestly,
yes.
On the very topical level of it. And it was tremendously helpful for me learning how to sort of control your mind. Like what's going on in your head is actually not what's happening.
Right.
And I feel like it did teach me a lot. Now, I sort of dove too deep into it, I would say, where it became a little bit of became more of a doctrine religion than it was just what I needed to learn from it. So I backpedaled a little bit, took what I need and left the rest. And I still really respect a lot of the teachings, the Buddhist teachings. We're actually headed to Thailand later this month. And, there's something really wonderful about the teachings that I think all of us can learn from, whether you're a Buddhist or not. And I feel like it's about being in the moment and learning it's okay just to learn to be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very simple, and it doesn't, I feel like on a day-to-day level, I love the teachings of Buddhism.
Well, mindfulness is a huge thing in our house, especially with kids and everything, trying to stay not spin out and think of all these things that are could be so much worse than they really are. That has been something that has been vital in our raising for adults, young adults now, that has been a real important part, mindfulness. I think that is something that anyone can take.
Yeah. That's another connection we have. When I was in New York, I went to Union Theological Seminary to study particularly with a woman who is a Buddhist Christian. She is both a Dharma teacher and a Presbyterian theologian, feminist theologian. And I heard her speak in Sydney, Australia in 1997, and I'm like, I'm her disciple. I have to, and when I got the chance to actually go to school there, I did. And so she taught Zen meditation, and so all of her courses were mixed with Buddhism, and so I found Zen meditation in Christian seminary in New York City.
Okay, that's amazing, because I think
How many connections you guys have to each other?
Why can't things be a little more of a poo-poo platter of what brings you whatever you need? And
We say Sunshine Cathedral, we are the Burger King of religion. We let you have it your way.
Yeah.
You know, we're cafeteria style religion. You know, maybe you don't want the cod today, so get the chicken.
Right.
Yeah.
We're offering everything we can.
I like
Take
that.
what you need.
Because I find that I'm just going to say so much of religion is this is the
Well, it's
one
black and white.
way,
It doesn't-
you know, and this is the only way. So I love that that's what you do.
Life is full of shades of gray, and I just feel like it can't be so black and white.
Well, in fact, for me, this is just me, but God is my word for reality, for just what is, for isness. It's ultimate reality. And in my finite perspective, I can't know all that is. You know what I mean? I just can't know. I can only know what I've experienced of it so far. And even my description of my description is not equal to my experience, and my experience isn't equal to all that is. So anytime I say, here's the answer and there's no other answer, you've created an idol. And the religion of my tradition says idols they get in the way. You're not supposed to have a lot of those. They screw you up. And unwarranted certainty is an idol.
It's a good way to think of it.
And it causes a lot of trouble. When you would say, I would rather believe in this invisible deity that I've been told about by long dead strangers than in my child who's telling me what his or her experience is, that is psychosis. I mean, well, I'm not saying it's pathology. It is pathological. And that's why we are doing what we do here. Because yes, I can be part of the pathology, fine. Or I can rail against it, please do. If those are your only two options, pick this one. But what if the spiritual but not religious people could still be in community and have celebrations and have a good time? And I've always thought that was possible. I've always wanted to offer that as an option. And so that's why we're here.
And look at you, you did. I mean,
Yes.
it's amazing. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here and part of it today. So how, you got away unscathed. How do you think, was there any permanent damage? I mean, did you have to have therapy or medication or, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Support groups.
lots of therapy.
Okay.
I'm luckily, knock on something, I've never really had to be medicated. Part of the reason I went to the meditation center was I was in such a bad place that I was having to take like Valium in order to be able to eat. I mean, I was in such a bad place. And I was like, I am too young to have to rely on medication to live. And look, there's plenty of people that need medication for depression, for a lot of things. But
There's nothing wrong with medication.
There is nothing wrong with medication. You know, I'm a firm believer if you need it, you should take it. But for my path, I wanted to see if there was another option. And that other option wouldn't work for other people. But you know what? It helped me sort of, whether it got me off the medication or not, it helped me realize that I can learn to control my thoughts. And it just was a game changer for me. And I find, you know, when I get in a spiral that I'm just like, all right, that's not actually happening.
Yeah.
It's not happening. It's happening in my head, but it's not really happening in life,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. And we're good at that with movies. Like we love movies, we love plays, we love television, but we know that's not real. That's not my life. That's what I'm watching. And yeah, my heart rate's elevated or I'm crying a little bit, but that's what I'm watching. But we forget that most dramas are like that.
Yeah.
Even the unscripted, unproduced ones.
It's true.
Yeah.
We're all here.
Yeah. I don't have to cast myself in that. I can watch it, but I don't have to. And of course, Buddhism calls that monkey mind when you're just all over the place and you're chasing the thoughts. And Buddhism teaches you to observe the thoughts. Don't chase them. Let them go.
It's often hard to do that, but but it's great if you can.
Yeah.
And I do want people to know, and I'm so glad for people who had healthy upbringings or easy healings, you know, but that it is traumatic. It is traumatic to tell your children, God loves you, but God has rules. And if you break God's rules, God will torment you or abandon you or whatever. That sets up a really weird dynamic of what people think love is, of what safety is, of what relationship is. So there's really no way to come out of that not traumatized. And then when you wind up on a list, so not only is that what God is, that's what love is. So really no one gets away unscathed from that narrative. But then if I'm on the list, now I'm divorced, now I have to make procreative choices, now I'm gay, now I'm trans, now I'm, oh wow. So now not only is that what God is, that's what love is, but now I'm on the hosed list that we're not all on psychiatric cocktails for the rest of our lives is kind of a miracle.
Right, it's true.
And so that's what I want people, that they think they want to do well, they think they're doing well, they think they're being faithful, they are actually imposing and sustaining trauma. And if I remember a friend of mine years ago, he had grown up in a fundamentalist environment. He came out, his parents were, not good about it. And his father said to him, I'm just afraid you're going to hell. And he was so wise, I thought. He said, and I deserve the kind of parents who would have chosen to go to hell with me. You chose the invisible God told to you about by long dead strangers over your kid. I deserved to have better parents than your God. And I always thought I just want people to always hear that.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting when you think about, all of the wounds that we've all, carried having grown up with all the challenges and how they actually manifest themselves as adults in relationships or whatever it is, how you parent your own children. That's when you really do learn to forgive your own parents, is when you have your own children, because you make mistakes. And I feel like, probably the biggest thing I've learned, with my kids and with Anne is like, not only to learn to apologize, but to learn to accept an apology. Because I feel like if you can't accept somebody's apology, then it's just not gonna, your life is not gonna be fun.
Well, you're holding it in your own heart. It hurts you more to not accept, right? If someone has stepped out and made the effort to apologize and really own what they've done, and you don't accept it, it holds it against in your heart that it's going to hurt,
Yeah. We'll never get a better past.
Right.
That's the thing. We want it so bad. Oh, if I can just control this and that, then I'll get a better. You're not. You'll never get a better past. But we can get healing from the past and create a better future.
Right.
And that's where forgiveness comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a powerful thing to forgive.
It's healing for sure.
But I will say what I've discovered, being somebody that I did have a period when I did come out that my mom was not okay with it. Even had nothing to do with religion. It was just only daughter.
Yeah.
What do you mean you're not going to get married and have kids and have that wedding and all the things?
But guess what?
Every dream, right?
But wait, there's more.
Just kidding. And 4 kids, and I don't have to give birth to one of them. Exciting. But it's like she was mourning her own expectations, not what was right for me. And maybe she thought it would be harder for me in life, whatever. It has not been harder for me in life at all. I've had a great life. I've been very lucky, but for years, we did not deal with each other very well. And so that was rough. And I didn't understand because she was very open with anyone else, loved gay people, but not me. So that was complicated. So what I will say, again, it gets better is a big thing and there is healing and all that. But when that happened, I really built my family in New York City. My friends became my family. My community became my family. I knew so many gay people, but also straight people and bisexual people and trans people. I had this huge community of friends. Like I was doing Friendsgiving. I wouldn't even go home for Thanksgiving because I would stay and we would do like a huge Thanksgiving with all the friends. And what I learned is we are very lucky in our community that we can really tighten up, and that's what you have here too. You can support each other, and we know lots of people that are not in contact with their families because of being gay and being ostracized or whatever. And so especially youth is so hard to see. I know you deal with that a lot here, seeing LGBTQ youth that are experiencing homelessness because their parents have kicked them out or whatever. That is very difficult to manage and emotionally think about, what it would feel like at that age. But I remember just knowing that once I found my people, it was like a whole new world for me.
Yeah.
And I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then my mom is great. My mom has come around.
Yeah.
Everything's great. She's an amazing grandparent.
People grow.
Yeah. People grow. They can get through it.
And you get to work with your wife.
I do.
Are your kids involved in the business part of it all?
No.
Not yet?
No, no interest.
So you work with your wife, but also you're talking about your friend's family. You have an accompaniment, you're a pianist. You seem to have a rapport with them more than just like
Yeah,
a
we're
musician you work with.
Yes, we're
you
best
see that on the stage. You just can tell. So how did you meet?
Well, we both worked in piano bars in New York City.
I see.
He came to one of my shows early on when he's from London, and he just actually got his citizenship in the U.S. Finally, he was on a green card, for a student green card, and then and now he's finally got his U.S. citizenship, so he's very excited. Anyway, his name is William Tienhall, and he is my best friend. We met when we worked together one night in a piano bar is when we officially connected, and now I've long since retired from piano bar, but he's still there. And but we travel. I mean that in a nice way. He's so much younger than me.
He's young.
He's much younger than me. He's like he could almost be
He's still
my
suitable
child.
for the bar scene.
He could almost be my child.
Yeah.
He could be her child.
Okay.
But anyway, we're not going to age
That's more my
ourselves.
relationship with Will.
I will say, when you retire to Fort Lauderdale, everyone does, that one doesn't age out of the bar scene here.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the community here we are a playful community.
Okay, that's good.
And yeah, you may have to get the Tops van to take you to the bar, but the bar scene, you never age out.
So no matter what.
Yeah, you
could
never age
okay,
out.
I love
Yeah,
that.
so
It's a good story.
And we always love coming to Fort Lauderdale.
We do. We love
Nice.
it here.
So you get to work, so he's basically part of your family. So this has become a sort of a family business. I
Yes.
love that. Let me switch a little bit since I want to talk about sex.
Great.
Because I'm a gay man and it's the law. That it's one of the strange things to me, and I don't know if you've noticed this. I think Presbyterians have communion about twice a decade, so you may not have noticed. But I think the Church of Christ have it a lot, and certainly the Lutherans have it a lot. That Christianity has such embodied language. You know, now we don't use this language because we try to keep things open enough so that you can insert what you need. So we don't talk about blood atonement. We don't think anybody was bad enough that required human sacrifice, and we don't use body and blood language at communion, but we do offer communion every week.
Okay.
And so for us, it's a family meal. It's a symbolic meal that brings us all together. No matter what your beliefs or doubts may be, we're sharing this moment together. That's what it is for us. So, but in traditional churches, you would hear, "This is my body, let me put it in my mouth. This is my blood, let me put it in my mouth." This is super sensual, even kind of kinky language that the church has used week after week after week for 2 millennia.
Yeah.
I just don't think you get to have a problem with people. You know what I mean? Like,
You know what? I never
hilarious.
thought of it that way, but it's a very interesting thing to say.
right?
Dude.
And I also thought that there was a lot of built-in misogyny around some of that. Like the body of Christ, that saves me. The blood of Christ, that saves me. The woman with the issue of blood, she couldn't touch anyone for 12 years. That a woman's blood was contaminating. A man's blood was salvific. There's so many things that if you approach things from a queer lens, this is my next question. That from a queer, everything we do is from queer theology, queer hermeneutics, queer experience. Readers make meaning. Most of us have some queer experience, so we're reading as the people we are. It changes what you read. It changes what you hear. It changes how you approach things. And so religion for me is so liberating through a queer lens. Which is why I love which is what queering does. It turns things upside down, turns things inside out. It spoils the patriarchy. It spoils heteronormativity. It spoils privilege, which is what we're here to do. And so what are some of the blessings you have found for being gay? That they weren't blessings you had until you came out and owned who you were. What are some queer blessings that you are so grateful for?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I mean, I'll go back to a little bit of what Anne was saying. I think that as a queer, gay, lesbian person, you do learn that you need to rely on the people around you that are there for you. I would say one of the great blessings is learning the value of your friendships and the people in your life, because, you know, if you are somebody that was in fear of losing your actual family that raised you, then those are the relationships that you're going to lean on. I also think that to always know that we have a community no matter where you go is really amazing. Like, I could move here tomorrow come to your church, come to one of your groups. I could do anything, and I would have a community.
Walk in a gay bar.
Walk in a gay bar.
And
I
someone's
would have
gonna
a
talk to you and
community right
embrace you.
there.
Right away.
And I think there is something really amazing about that. And I also think it's sort of, the path makes your life a little more interesting. The obstacles you overcame just makes you a little stronger, a little more compassionate about being different when you meet somebody else that's different than you. I think it just gives you a better tool chest to operate in life.
Hers was very introspective. Mine is I doubled my closet. if we're the same size at this time. That's one thing. That's a blessing.
It is.
We also wear the same shoe size, also a blessing.
Yep.
But also, I have been, for me, one of my blessings is that I have a family because of her, because of meeting her. I could have done that on my own if I was straight, whatever. I could have had a baby. You did it as a gay person. But one of the blessings of my life is being gifted a family, being added to a family.
Yeah.
So I have these amazing kids that have been in my life for, 13 years we've been together, but we've known each other for 18 years. So I've known these kids, since they were 2 and up.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky that is one of the biggest blessings of my life.
Right.
Not only the fact that I don't know what it would be like. I didn't really ever, I dated men before, in high school and college, but the level of meeting someone that as a lesbian that I fell in love with, and that feeling of what that is and that connection to me is another great blessing in my life. I don't know if I hadn't explored that path and if I hadn't been brave enough to do that, because I think a lot of people spend their lives married to a man. I could have married a man and just been not unhappy maybe for
miserable,
a lot of my life.
something. Yeah.
A lot of people that I know a lot of people that are married that are gay, still. And I feel like being brave is a huge thing that's important in this, because you can't do it without being brave. Our community is so brave.
We are brave. It is true. Well, and I tell people, because we get hate mail all the time, as you might imagine, because we're so out there. And we did in response to drag story hour, we did drag Bible study for Advent. Drag time, and so I told Bible stories in drag. We had the Rosary Brigade. We had a group that came every week with signs and rosaries to pray against us while we're having Bible study. It was kind of funny, really, but in a tragic sort of way, that's what they thought religion was about. And we were having a really good time, and also really talking about the Bible. In fact, we talked about drag and trans stuff and queer families in the Bible. It was very revelatory. So, but when they do come at us and say, you're going to hell. Well, first, you can have that. I don't even believe in that. And second of all, if I could have 50 years with a man that I love or eternity without him, guess what I'm picking?
Yeah.
Your threat is way hollower than you realize. And any God that would require me to give up the love of my life, not interested in him either.
Right.
So.
No, it's true.
It's so true.
Yeah. So speaking of, because you live in the People's Republic of New York, I'm jealous. I miss it sometimes, but not in the wintertime. But you're aware, the governor of Arkansas, the governor of Florida, the governor of Tennessee, the governor of Texas. In fact, there are literally already by early February hundreds of anti-trans, anti-drag, and anti-LGBTQ bills in state legislatures in 2023. It's horrifying. It's unbelievable. People are running for office on this, like they really think that enough of the country is so hateful. I'm scared they might be right. Say something about that.
Although you have to imagine that every person has a gay relative or a gay friend. It's very hard for me to wrap my head around. But although, I think we thought, was it ever possible that Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned? It's really, we are operating in a different time.
Yes.
And I think I think if people voted, we would be okay.
Yeah.
But everybody's just so complacent because my life looks pretty good. Look, you live in Florida with DeSantis. It's like, you don't have a terrible life right now.
I live in the bubble.
Yeah, you live in a bubble.
Yes.
But all of the people that live in the bubble need to go vote.
Exactly.
Everybody doesn't live in one.
And we do have worse voting rates in our area than the rest of the state.
Yeah.
Well, that's terrible.
That is terrible. Do better.
Yes. Vote.
Please vote.
queers.
Vote. I mean, really,
Yes.
it's complicated. Now we do live in New York. New Jersey is there. Like we have this we're in a sort of a
Connecticut, yeah,
bubble.
great
You know,
place.
we're in a bubble ourselves. But we are very active with signing people up to vote. We knock on
at the
doors.
polls,
We work at the polls. We do as much as we can possibly do. Our kids all vote. Like they know that there is no option. Everybody needs to vote. But
It should be a day off of work,
Yes.
and it should be required. You get fined if you don't go vote. I mean,
Yes.
I am a firm believer of that.
But it's really scary what's happening with our rights.
Yes.
You know, and I
Well, you
talk
now
about-
have one less right than you had several months ago.
Yeah.
Like you have a guaranteed right taken away. First of all, it's horrifying enough. Second of all, they never stop with one.
No.
They got away with that. So now there's a list.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we have 2 daughters. The Roe v. Wade thing it's real for us.
Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of fears about it.
Sure.
And now like asking people to register, women to register when they have their periods, like this whole concept, it's like Handmaid's Tale
Right.
in action.
Yes.
So that if you somehow miss a period, then they'll know, like,
Right.
so upsetting and scary. And I always think about
Dystopian.
like the women's rights, voting rights, gay rights, all these things, people that fought and died for our rights. And they're all getting turned little by little. It must feel so terrible to people that, I mean, I came up in a time where it was relatively, I mean, it's still complicated. It's getting worse, but I'm saying it's been relatively easy for me as a gay person in general. And when we wanted to get married, it already passed.
And we look at our
You know,
daughters and the fact that they have less rights than we had.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's really scary.
That is
But I think
devastating.
about the people that fought and died for those rights. And they have to look at it now and say, again? Really?
Well, and the chances that our kids are going to learn about that in high school textbooks are now less also.
Yes. Yeah.
This is really a very dangerous time. It's way too dangerous for us to be silent and for us to not be voting.
Right. Exactly.
So if you feel like, here I am just complaining and what difference does it make? Well, not doing anything's not making a difference either. So you may as well make some noise. So,
It's true.
and please vote. Well, let me see. I think I got time for maybe one or two more. What do you want us to know that I haven't asked you yet? About you as a family, about you as an artist, about you as queer activist? What do we need to know?
You go.
Me?
Why don't you talk about your 20 years?
Oh, well, I am excited
your
to say,
company.
yeah. So I co-founded Our Family Vacations. It'll be 20 years ago this year. And we originally started it because I had a family of my own. And I went to Provincetown for the first time for Family Week. And it was the first time my kids saw other families that looked like theirs. And I just felt like if my kids hadn't seen that, I can't imagine what the kids in Montana feel like, or in the middle of Idaho. And it's like, and we lived in New York City. And so I thought, there's an idea here. And 20 years ago, I launched this business with my business partner, Greg Kaminsky, and we created the first vacation for LGBTQ families. And we're celebrating our 20th anniversary. Yeah. So, I mean, my business has changed significantly since then. We still do the one trip a year for gay families, but now it's, I have empty nesters now. So I do adult only trips for gay and lesbians and their straight friends and family. I'm sort of like the brand, like, if you like us, we like you.
Yes.
It's like, it's all about community. So it may be on one of our trips could be me and Ann, and I bring my brother and my sister-in-law and their kids and my parents, and that's what a gay family looks like. So that's a little bit, of what we're doing. But yeah, 20 years, it's very exciting.
And if people want to know more about this, how do they find out?
They can go to kellygregtravel.com.
Excellent.
Kelly with an I, Greg with two G's.
Yes.
It's very confusing.
But that's excellent. What about you?
Well, for me, I am finally, after COVID and we couldn't perform in public and all that. I mean, we were on the Greece cruise and we were all just so happy to be traveling, and that was so amazing. So I'm just happy to be back traveling again and performing, starting here, which is so exciting. Tomorrow night, Sorry, you guys are missing it. But then I'm starting a brand new show so mixtape. This is my last time doing this show. I'm starting a new show called Where the Boys Are. And it's all songs for me, being a lesbian growing up. I was always drawn to, so, we were talking earlier about how men are often drawn to strong female characters and female singers. I was drawn to songs sung by men because they're singing about a woman. And I didn't quite understand why I'd be drawn to that. Like, it wasn't like I was a crazy, like, I wasn't like Melissa Etheridge obsessed or, someone that would maybe be like a little bit, she wasn't out at that time, but like lesbian. I mean, I did like her music, but that
we all knew. I feel like in the 80s, we all knew.
I know, everybody knew, right? It was pretty obvious. But like that whole vibe wasn't what I was drawn to. I was drawn to men singing about women. And I didn't quite understand it. So I'm doing a show called Where the Boys Are, and it's all songs sung by men that affected me in my life. So that's the next show, and I'm going to sort of flip everything on its head. It'll be my version of it. So it'll be songs literally from the Bee Gees to Barry Manilow to Elton John to Billy Joel. It's literally, and then contemporary stuff too. So I'm excited about that. I'm starting it in New York City at Joe's Pub on June 4th. And then I am playing the Art House in Provincetown on July 8th. And then the next one that's on the books technically is Toucan's Tiki Lounge in Palm Springs on November 11th. But then I have a bunch of cruises, the Source cruise that we're doing in the Source Pride cruise from Basel to Amsterdam.
Yes.
And that is what is that? That's July into August, and we're ending in Pride in Amsterdam.
I'm going to be there.
So excited. Are you staying?
I'm so excited to travel with you guys.
Yes, again.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to stay for like the weekend after. And
So if I like the show, I'll ask you back.
Exactly. So I'm excited. I'm just happy to be back on tour and doing things. And I'm doing one of her river cruises, and I'm doing our family's summer trip. And so it's just going to be really fun.
We're both happy to be back working again.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for the show that's coming up.
Yes.
And thanks for sharing with us. I wanted people to get to know you because you're worth knowing.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
LGBTQ+ news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Lara are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ+ community.